My daughter sold my late wife's sapphire ring for a pathetic $800 just to fund her Hawaii vacation with my money. When I went to the pawn shop to buy it back, the owner looked at me and whispered, "Sir, you won't believe what we found inside this ring. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now." The jewelry box sat open on the dresser, mocking me with its emptiness. My hands trembled as I lifted the velvet liner for the third time that morning, as if Eleanor's ring might somehow materialize beneath it. It didn't. For 2 days I'd been tearing the house apart. Every drawer, every shelf, every pocket of every coat I owned. The panic had started as a flutter in my chest and grown into a full-blown storm. I'd checked under the bed, behind the nightstand, even in the bathroom cabinet where Eleanor used to keep her lotions. Nothing. "Dad, what are you doing?" I looked up to find my daughter Danielle leaning against the doorframe, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between amusement and... what? Satisfaction. "Your mother's ring," I said, hearing the strain in my own voice. "The sapphire ring. It's gone. I can't find it anywhere." Danielle straightened up, smoothing down her designer blouse, the one I'd apparently helped to pay for without knowing it. "Oh, that. Don't worry about it, Dad. Don't worry about it." As if Eleanor's 25th anniversary gift could be dismissed with a wave of her manicured hand. "What do you mean, don't worry?" I sank onto the edge of the bed, exhausted from 2 sleepless nights and the physical toll of searching every corner of this house. "I took it to Fisher's Pawn on Burnside. Tracy and I needed the money for our Hawaii trip." She said it so casually, like she was telling me she'd borrowed my car. "We really needed to get away from all this stress, you know? You understand." I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. The words weren't processing correctly. My daughter, my only child, had taken her mother's ring and pawned it. "You pawned Eleanor's ring?" "Yeah, but don't make such a big deal out of it." Danielle walked into the room, picked up a photo frame from the dresser, Eleanor and me on our 30th anniversary, and set it back down without really looking at it. "They only gave me $800 for it anyway. Better than nothing, right? And honestly, it would have been mine eventually. Mom's been gone 3 years. It's not like she's wearing it." I felt something shift inside me. Not break. Breaking would have been too clean. Too simple. This was more like a fundamental restructuring of my internal landscape. 35 years I'd spent as a gemologist, evaluating precious stones for one of Portland's most prestigious auction houses. I'd handled diamonds worth millions, sapphires that belonged in museums. Eleanor's ring, with its rare Burmese sapphire, flawless and deep as the ocean, was worth at least $85,000. $800. No pawn shop in their right mind would offer $800 for that ring. Unless... 800? I heard myself say, my voice oddly calm. "Yeah, I thought we'd get more, but whatever. It's enough for the hotel upgrade and some nice dinners." She checked her phone, already losing interest in the conversation. "Tracy's waiting for me. We're finalizing the vacation plans." I watched her leave, her footsteps light on the hardwood floors that Eleanor and I had refinished ourselves 20 years ago. Through the open door, I could hear Tracy, my son-in-law of 6 years, laughing in the kitchen, probably scrolling through resort photos. Something was very, very wrong. I'd spent 3 decades identifying fakes, spotting synthetic stones that fooled even experienced dealers. The Burmese sapphire in Eleanor's ring had been hand-selected from a dealer in Bangkok, certified, documented. No legitimate pawnshop would look at that stone and offer $800. They'd either recognize its value and offer significantly more, or they'd be suspicious enough to refuse it entirely, which meant one of 2 things. Either Danielle had no idea what she'd actually sold, unlikely given how many times she'd admired that ring growing up, or the ring she'd pawned wasn't Eleanor's at all. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting. 67 years old, and I'd never felt more ancient than in this moment. But alongside the exhaustion and the shock, something else was crystallizing. That old professional instinct, the one that had made me one of the most trusted appraisers on the West Coast, was whispering that there was more to this story. If that wasn't Eleanor's ring in the pawn shop, then where was the real one? And how had Danielle gotten hold of a fake good enough to pass casual inspection? I walked to the window and looked out at the Portland drizzle, gray and endless. Downstairs, I heard Tracy call out something about airport parking, and Danielle's laughter in response. They sounded so carefree, so certain they'd gotten away with something. 35 years of examining stones had taught me patience. You don't rush an appraisal. You look at every angle, check every facet, consider every possibility. You verify before you act. I had a pawn shop to visit, and then I suspected I had a lot more questions that needed answering. But first, I needed to understand exactly what my daughter had done, and more importantly, why. I couldn't sleep that night. The ceiling fan rotated above me in the darkness, the same fan Eleanor had insisted we install during that brutal summer 15 years ago. The ring. The memory hit me with unexpected force. It was our 25th anniversary. We'd been walking through the jewelry district in San Francisco when Eleanor stopped in front of a small boutique. Inside was a sapphire, not in a setting yet, just the raw stone under a jeweler's lamp. It glowed with an impossible depth of blue. "That's extraordinary," I'd said, and I meant it. Even with a decade of professional experience, that stone took my breath away. The dealer was an elderly man from Bangkok who'd been in the gem trade for 50 years. He told us the stone's history, mined from Mogok in Burma, before the civil conflicts made such mining nearly impossible. It had taken him 3 months to source it. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "It's beautiful, but we can't afford—" "We'll take it," I'd said. I arranged payment over 6 months, and we worked with a jeweler to create a platinum setting. When I placed it on Eleanor's finger that Christmas, she cried. "I'll never take it off," she'd promised. She kept that promise until the cancer made her fingers swell. Even then, she kept it in the box by our bed, taking it out sometimes just to look at it. Now I sat up, turned on the bedside lamp. 3 years since Eleanor's death, and that box had never looked more empty. 3 years since Danielle and Tracy moved in temporarily. Danielle had moved in a week after the funeral. She'd cried on my shoulder, said she couldn't bear me being alone in this big house. Tracy had carried in their suitcases, promising they'd find their own place within a month. That was 3 years ago. They'd never once offered to pay rent, utilities, or even groceries. Every time I'd gently suggested they might want to start looking for their own place, Danielle would tear up. "Dad, you don't want us here. After everything with Mom." And I'd back down every time. Because what kind of father kicks out his grieving daughter? Except now, lying in the dark, I was remembering other things. The small loans that were never repaid. 500 here for a car repair. 1,000 there for a medical bill. 3,000 for Tracy's investment opportunity that never materialized. I'd stopped keeping track. What was the point? She was my daughter. But the number, when I forced myself to add it up, was staggering. Over $40,000 in 3 years. And then there were Eleanor's other things. The silver earrings she'd inherited from her grandmother. Danielle said she'd lost them. The delicate gold bracelet from our 10th anniversary, damaged beyond repair, apparently. Even Eleanor's simple gold wedding band. "I'm keeping it safe for you, Dad." I got out of bed and went to my office. On the desk was a stack of bank statements I'd been meaning to go through. I'd given Danielle access to my checking account a year ago when I'd had the flu. "Just in case something happens," she'd said. I'd never revoked that access. Now I opened the statements and really looked. Electronic withdrawals I didn't remember authorizing. 5,000 for medical treatment, but I hadn't been to a doctor in months. 3,500 for home repairs? What repairs? 7,000 for emergency expenses. What emergency? My hands started shaking, but this time not from exhaustion. $30,000 in unauthorized withdrawals over the past year alone. I thought about Eleanor in those final months. She'd tried to tell me something. I remembered now the way you remember faded dreams. She'd been lucid despite the pain medication, holding my hand in the hospital bed. "Robert," she'd said, "you need to pay attention. To Danielle. To the money. Promise me you'll be careful." But I'd been drowning in grief, unable to process anything beyond losing her. I'd nodded and forgotten about it the moment she'd closed her eyes. Eleanor had known. Somehow she'd seen what I'd been too blind to see. I sat back, Eleanor's old watercolor of Mount Hood hanging crooked beside me. Danielle and Tracy were probably asleep now, dreaming of Hawaiian beaches, paid for with Eleanor's ring. paid for with money they'd been systematically stealing from me for 3 years. The thing about being a gemologist is that you learn to see what's really there, not what people want you to see. You learn that the prettiest stones are often the most flawed. You learn that provenance matters, where something came from, and how it got here. I'd been looking at my daughter the way a father looks at his child, with love, with trust, with assumed good faith. But if I looked at her the way a gemologist examines a suspect stone, the picture was very different. Systematic theft, manipulation, exploitation of grief and trust, and a fake ring pawned for $800, while the real ring, worth $85,000, was somewhere else entirely. I stood and walked to the window. The Portland rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflecting streetlights. Danielle's car was in the driveway, the BMW she'd bought last year. Tracy got a bonus, she'd said, though I'd never been quite sure what Tracy actually did for a living. Something cold and calculating rose in my chest. Not anger yet. That would come later. This was the same feeling I got when a dealer tried to pass off a synthetic diamond as natural. That quiet certainty that I was being played, combined with the equally quiet determination to prove it. Eleanor's ring was out there somewhere, and I was going to find out exactly what my daughter had done with it. But first I needed to visit a pawnshop on Burnside. Fisher's Pawn and Loans sat on Burnside Street between a Thai restaurant and a tax preparation office that looked like it had been closed since the 90s. The neon sign flickered. The I in loans was completely dead. I'd driven past this place 100 times over the years, and never once thought I'd have a reason to walk through that door. The bell chimed as I entered. The shop smelled like old leather and desperation, the same smell I remembered from estate sales, where families sold off everything their parents owned for a fraction of its worth. Display cases lined the walls, guitars, cameras, jewelry, power tools, all the detritus of people who'd run out of options. Behind the counter sat a man in his late 50s, thick around the middle, wearing a flannel shirt that had seen better days. He didn't look up from his phone. "Help you?" he said, still scrolling. "I'm looking for the owner. Ron Fisher?" "That's me." He finally glanced up, and I could see him doing the mental calculation. Was I here to pawn something, or looking for trouble? "What can I do for you?" "My name is Robert Coleman. I worked at Heritage Auctions for 35 years. Senior gemologist." The change was immediate. Fisher set down his phone and straightened up. Even pawn shop owners know the names that matter in the Portland jewelry scene. Heritage Auctions had handled some of the most significant estate sales on the West Coast. "Mr. Coleman, what brings you to my shop?" "I'm looking for a ring that was brought in recently. February 10th or 11th, sold by a tall blonde woman, late 30s. Fisher's expression shifted to something cautious. "That's pretty specific." "The woman is my daughter, Danielle. She told me she pawned her mother's ring here. I'd like to see it." He studied me for a long moment, and then moved to a safe behind the counter. When he returned, he was holding a small velvet box. He opened it and set it on the glass counter between us. There it was, the ring that had sent me spiraling for 2 days. "May I?" I pulled my jeweler's loop from my pocket. 35 years in the business, and I still carried it everywhere. Old habits. Fisher nodded and watched as I examined the ring under magnification. It took me less than 10 seconds to confirm what my instincts had been screaming. Synthetic sapphire. Not even a particularly good one. I could see the curved growth lines that marked it as lab-created. The setting was gold-plated brass, not platinum. The prongs were already showing wear at the base. Someone had done a decent job making it look convincing to the untrained eye, but to a professional, it was like looking at a photocopy and being told it was an original Rembrandt. $800, I asked, keeping my voice neutral. That's what I gave her. It's a fair price for what it is. It's actually generous, I said, and I meant it. The ring was worth maybe $40 in materials. You spotted it as a reproduction? Fisher relaxed slightly. I've been in this business 23 years, Mr. Coleman. I know synthetic when I see it, but it's a quality fake. Whoever made it knew what they were doing. Your daughter seemed disappointed with the price, but... He shrugged. I set down the loop and looked at the ring again. Whoever had created this reproduction had access to the original. They'd matched the setting style, the approximate size of the stone, even the engraving on the inside of the band. though they'd gotten Eleanor's name slightly wrong, spelling it Eleanor with one A. A small detail, but telling. "Do you have security footage?" I asked. Fisher hesitated. "Mr. Coleman, I don't want to get in the middle of a family situation." "I'm not asking you to. I just want to see the footage, for my own peace of mind." He must have seen something in my face, or maybe he just felt sorry for the old man whose daughter had pawned a fake ring. He pulled up the security footage on a monitor behind the counter and turned it so I could see. There was Danielle, clear as day. February 10th, 2:47 p.m., according to the timestamp. She walked in carrying a small jewelry box, chatted with Fisher for a few minutes, handed over the ring. The camera caught her face when he offered $800. Disappointment flashed across her features before she forced a smile and accepted. She signed some paperwork, took the cash, and left. "Could I get a copy of that footage?" I asked. "For family records." Fisher looked at me for a long moment. I could see him weighing whether this was going to come back to haunt him. Finally, he nodded. "Give me your email. I'll send it over." I wrote down my address on a business card, one of the old ones from Heritage Auctions that I still had in my wallet. Fisher took it, glanced at it, and his expression softened even more. "Mr. Coleman, if you don't mind me asking, why would your daughter pawn a fake ring?" That was the question, wasn't it? I could think of only two possibilities. Either Danielle genuinely didn't know it was fake, which seemed unlikely given how many times she'd admired Eleanor's ring over the years, or she knew exactly what she was doing. She'd pawned the reproduction to establish a paper trail, to make it look like she'd sold Eleanor's ring for a pittance, when in reality. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," I said. I drove home in a daze, my mind working through the implications. If Danielle had pawned a fake, then she'd had access to the original, long enough to have a reproduction made. That wasn't something you could do overnight. It would take time, money, and contacts with someone who specialized in that kind of work. It meant this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision to grab some quick cash for a vacation. This was planned, deliberate, calculated. When I pulled into the driveway, Danielle's BMW was there, along with Tracy's Audi, the one he'd somehow afforded on his mysterious consulting income. I could hear music from inside the house. They were home, probably packing for their trip, completely oblivious to what I'd just discovered. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the house. My house. The one Eleanor and I had bought 32 years ago, when Danielle was 6. The one we'd painted together, room by room. The one where we'd raised our daughter, celebrated birthdays and holidays, built a life. The one Danielle and Tracy were currently treating like a free hotel. 35 years in the gem trade had taught me patience. When you're examining a stone, you don't rush. You look at it from every angle. You test it, verify it, document it. You gather all the evidence before you make your final assessment. I needed to know where the real ring was, and I needed to understand exactly how long Danielle had been playing me for a fool. But first, I needed to go inside and pretend everything was normal. I needed to smile and wish them a good trip to Hawaii. I needed to be the doddering old dad who didn't notice anything was wrong, because I had a feeling that once I started pulling on this thread, the whole tapestry was going to unravel. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a cup of coffee gone cold and a list of names in front of me. 35 years in the jewelry business meant I knew people. The question was which people to call and what exactly to ask them. Marcus Chen's name was at the top of the list. We'd worked together for almost 20 years before he'd left Heritage to open his own boutique gallery in the Pearl District. If anyone in Portland knew about high-end jewelry transactions, it was Marcus. More importantly, I trusted him. I dialed his number, watching through the office window as Danielle and Tracy loaded suitcases into the BMW. They were leaving for the airport in a few hours, Hawaii for 2 weeks. I'd overheard Tracy on the phone yesterday, bragging to someone about the oceanfront suite they'd booked. "Robert Coleman," Marcus answered, warmth in his voice. "It's been too long. How are you?" "I need a favor, Marcus, and I need you to be discreet about it." The warmth shifted to curiosity. "Of course. What's going on?" I explained about Eleanor's ring. Not all of it. Not the part about Danielle. Just that a significant piece had gone missing, and I was trying to trace it. Burmese sapphire. Platinum setting. Very specific characteristics. Had anything like that crossed his desk? Or had he heard anything through his network? That's a distinctive piece, Marcus said. Let me make some calls. If it's moved through any of the legitimate dealers in Portland, someone will know about it. After we hung up, I turned my attention to the bank statements spread across my desk. I'd spent the previous evening going through them line by line, and the picture they painted was damning. I pulled up my online banking and started documenting everything. Screenshots of transactions, dates, amounts. The electronic withdrawals Danielle had made using the account access I'd given her just in case. $5,000 on January 15th. Memo line, medical expenses. I hadn't been to a doctor in January. $3,500 on December 3rd. Memo line, home repairs. No repairs had been done. $7,000 on November 8th. Memo line, emergency funds. What emergency? The list went on. 12 separate withdrawals over the past year, totaling just over $30,000. And those were just the electronic transfers. That didn't count the cash loans that had never been repaid, the credit card charges I'd approved without really looking at them. I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly minimized the browser window. Danielle appeared in the doorway, dressed for travel in designer yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, both probably purchased with my money. Hey, Dad, we're about to head to the airport. Just wanted to say goodbye. I turned in my chair and smiled. Have a wonderful time, sweetie. You two deserve a break. She came over and kissed my cheek. Thanks for being so understanding about the ring. I know it upset you, but Tracy and I really needed this trip. The stress at work has been killing us both. Work? Right. I'd never actually seen evidence that either of them had jobs. What time does your flight leave? 4:30. We'll be in Maui by 9 tonight. She checked her phone, the latest iPhone, naturally. Tracy's loading the car now. I left the pawn shop receipt on the kitchen counter, in case you want to try to buy the ring back later. That's thoughtful of you. She started to leave, then paused. Dad, I know you miss Mom. I miss her too. But holding on to her things doesn't bring her back. Sometimes we have to let go and move forward. It took everything I had to keep smiling. You're probably right, honey. Have a safe flight. After they left, I sat in the silence of the empty house. Through the window, I watched the BMW disappear down the street. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks while they were living it up in Hawaii, completely unaware that I knew about the fake ring. 2 weeks to figure out exactly what had happened to Eleanor's real ring and what else they'd been hiding. I called my bank and made an appointment for the next day. Then I started researching estate lawyers in Portland. Marcus called back 3 days later. I was in the kitchen pretending to read the newspaper while actually making notes about everything I'd discovered when my phone rang. Robert, I found something. You might want to sit down. I'm already sitting. Your ring, or one that matches your description exactly, was sold through Belmont Estate Jewelers in December. December 18th, to be specific. My hand tightened on the phone. Sold? Not pawned. Sold outright to a private collector. The seller was a woman matching your daughter's description. The buyer was William Douglas. He's a serious collector. Focuses on rare colored stones. The sale price was $67,000. $67,000. $800 at the pawn shop. The numbers echoed in my head. Robert? You still there? Yes, I'm here. Do you know how I can contact this Douglas? I can arrange an introduction, but Robert, if your daughter sold it without your knowledge, this is going to get complicated. Douglas bought it in good faith. Getting it back won't be simple. I understand. Can you set up a meeting? I'll see what I can do. That evening, Danielle posted a photo on social media, her and Tracy on the beach at sunset, drinks in hand. The caption read, Paradise. Thank you to the best dad in the world for always supporting us. The comments were full of heart emojis and people telling her how lucky she was. I stared at that photo for a long time, at her bright smile, at the way she held that tropical drink like she hadn't a care in the world. $67,000. She'd sold her mother's ring for $67,000 and used the money to fund her lifestyle while living in my house, eating my food, and systematically draining my bank account. I thought about Eleanor in those final weeks, how she'd tried to warn me, how I'd been too grief-stricken to listen, how I'd thought I was doing the right thing by letting Danielle move in, by helping her financially, by being the supportive father. What a fool I'd been. But I wasn't a fool anymore. 35 years of examining stones had taught me how to spot a fake. I'd finally learned to apply that same scrutiny to people. I pulled up my computer and started drafting an email to Gloria Sanchez, the estate attorney I'd found. I needed to understand my legal options. I needed to understand how to protect what was left of Eleanor's legacy and my own future. Because Danielle and Tracy might think they'd won. They might think the old man was too blind, too trusting, too weak to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 2 weeks. They'd given me 2 weeks to prepare. By the time they got back from Hawaii, everything was going to be different. I just hoped they'd enjoyed their last free vacation. Gloria Sanchez's law office occupied the 3rd floor of a brick building in downtown Portland, the kind of place that spoke of old money and older traditions. Marcus had recommended her, and when I called, she'd fit me in the next morning. Now I sat across from her desk, watching her make notes with a fountain pen, an increasingly rare sight in the digital age. Let me make sure I understand correctly, Mr. Coleman. She looked up, her dark eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. Your daughter has been living in your home for 3 years, rent-free. She has access to your bank account. She sold your late wife's ring, a family heirloom worth over $80,000, without your permission and kept the proceeds. And she pawned a fake version to create a paper trail suggesting she only received $800. That's correct. And you have documentation of all this? The bank statements, the security footage, the sales records? I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. Everything. Gloria spent 15 minutes reviewing the documents, occasionally making notes. When she finished, she set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. Mr. Coleman, this is quite straightforward from a legal standpoint. The house is in your name alone. The bank account is yours. You can revoke her access at any time. As for the ring, the sale was fraudulent since she didn't own it, but recovering it will be complicated since the buyer purchased in good faith. I'm working on that separately, I said. Good. Now, there's one wrinkle. Your daughter has established residency in your home. She's lived there over 30 days, which gives her certain tenant rights under Oregon law. You can't simply lock her out. You'll need to provide formal notice, typically 30 days, and if she refuses to leave, you'll need to go through eviction proceedings. I'd expected something like this. What if she leaves voluntarily? Then it's much simpler. No legal process required. Gloria studied me for a moment. May I speak candidly? Please. You strike me as someone with a plan. What is it you're actually asking me to help you with? I smiled slightly. 35 years of reading people's intentions when they brought me potentially stolen gems had taught me to recognize the same skill in others. I need to protect my assets, all of them. I want to revoke Danielle's access to my finances, change my will, establish new power of attorney arrangements, and I want it all done while she's out of town. She's traveling? Hawaii? Leaves tomorrow for 2 weeks. Gloria picked up her pen again. That's doable. Tight timeline, but doable. Revoking bank access is immediate. A new will takes a few days to properly draft and execute, but we can have it done within the week. Power of attorney can be handled simultaneously. She paused. Who do you want to designate as your new power of attorney? Not family, I said firmly. What about a charitable organization? Something that can't be easily challenged or manipulated? That's actually quite wise. I can recommend several reputable organizations that provide such services. She made another note. Mr. Coleman, I should tell you, when your daughter returns and discovers what you've done, this is going to get ugly. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing for it since I found out what she did to Eleanor's ring. Eleanor was your late wife? Yes, 3 years ago. Cancer. Something in Gloria's expression softened, just for a moment. I'm sorry, and I understand why this matters so much to you. She straightened the papers on her desk. Let's get started. The sooner we file these documents, the sooner you'll be protected. I left her office 2 hours later with a checklist and a court date. Step 1. Revoke bank access the moment Danielle's plane took off. Step 2. Change the house locks. Step 3. Return to Gloria's office to sign the new documents once they were prepared. Step 4. Try to negotiate the return of Eleanor's ring. When I got home, Danielle and Tracy were in the kitchen, surrounded by shopping bags from one of those upscale outdoor stores, where a simple t-shirt costs $80. Dad, perfect timing! Danielle held up a brightly colored Hawaiian shirt. We just got back from getting vacation clothes. Look what we found for you. I took the shirt, price tag still attached, $95. My credit card had probably paid for it. That's very thoughtful, I said, managing a smile. Tracy was already modeling a pair of board shorts. We're all set for paradise, man. 2 weeks of sun, surf, and Mai Tais. You sure you don't want to come? We could probably squeeze you into a hotel room. How generous. Let me pay thousands of dollars to sleep on a cot, in a room my daughter and son-in-law were staying in, using money they'd stolen from me. No. You two enjoy yourselves. I'll be fine here. Danielle hugged me, and I forced myself not to stiffen. You're the best, Dad. I know this year has been hard, with the anniversary of Mom's death coming up, but things are going to get better. I can feel it. I can feel it too, I said, and I meant every word. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I sat in my office and made a list. Not on the computer, on paper, where there'd be no digital trail. Every step I'd take over the next 2 weeks. Every call I'd make. Every document I'd sign. Every lock I'd change. By the time they came home from Hawaii, everything would be different. They just didn't know it yet. I looked at the calendar. February 19th. Their flight left at 4:30 in the afternoon. I'd drive them to the airport myself, wave goodbye with a smile, wish them a wonderful trip, and then I'd go to war. The next morning I woke to the sound of suitcases being dragged down the stairs. Danielle and Tracy were laughing about something, their voices carrying through the house like they owned the place. I suppose they thought they did. I made breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, the works. A proper send-off. Dad, you didn't have to do all this, Danielle said, though she piled her plate high enough. I wanted to. It's not every day my daughter goes to Hawaii. Tracy checked his watch. We should leave by 2:30 to be safe. Airport security and all that. I'll drive you, I offered. That way you won't have to pay for parking. Are you sure? It's a long drive back alone. I smiled. I'll manage. At 2:15 I loaded their luggage into my car while they did a final check of the house. I watched Tracy lock the front door with his key, a key that would be useless by this time tomorrow. The drive to the airport was filled with their chatter about resorts and excursions and restaurants they'd researched. I made appropriate noises, asked appropriate questions, and thought about Gloria's documents waiting to be signed. At the departure terminal, I helped them unload their bags. Danielle hugged me one more time. Love you, Dad. Thanks for everything. We'll bring you back something nice. Have a wonderful time, I said. Both of you. Forget about everything and just enjoy yourselves. I stood there watching them walk into the terminal, their expensive luggage rolling behind them, heading off to their expensive vacation, the last vacation I'd ever finance. Then I got back in my car and drove straight to the bank. The bank manager, Tom Morrison, had known me for over 20 years. We'd worked together on estate valuations, authenticating jewelry from safe deposit boxes, navigating the complicated intersection of sentiment and value that comes with inherited wealth. When I walked into his office at 5:15 that afternoon, he took one look at my face and closed the door. What's wrong, Robert? I told him. Not everything. Not about the fake ring or the investigation, but enough. Unauthorized withdrawals, my daughter's access to my account, the need to protect what remained of my savings. Tom's expression grew darker with each sentence. How much are we talking about? Over 30,000 in the past year. Probably 70,000 if you count the 3 years before that. He pulled up my account on his computer, fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. This is financial elder abuse, Robert. We should report this. Not yet. I need to handle it my way first. Can you help me? He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Let's start with revoking access. Then we'll set up a new account and transfer your funds. The old account will remain open but empty. If she tries to access it, we'll know immediately. The process took 40 minutes. With each form I signed, each authorization I revoked, I felt a weight lifting. This wasn't revenge yet. This was just closing the barn door before any more horses could escape. But it felt good. It felt like taking control. Done, Tom finally said. She no longer has any access to your accounts. If she tries to withdraw money or make transfers, the system will block her. Thank you, Tom. Robert, he hesitated. When she finds out, she's going to be furious. Are you safe? Is she dangerous? Dangerous. I considered the question. Not physically, but yes, I think she's going to be very angry. That's why I'm doing this while she's 3,000 miles away. I drove home as the sun set, painting the Portland sky in shades of orange and pink. The house felt different when I walked in, emptier, cleaner somehow, even though nothing had physically changed. It was my house again, not theirs. The next morning I called a locksmith. I need every lock in the house changed. Front door, back door, garage, everything. He arrived at 10. By noon I had new keys and the old locks bagged and labeled for documentation. Just in case Danielle tried to claim I'd stolen her keys or locked her out illegally, I'd have proof that these locks had been professionally changed after she left. Then came the harder part. I went upstairs to what had been Danielle and Tracy's room. Their clothes hung in the closet. Their toiletries cluttered the bathroom. Their life together scattered across every surface. 3 years of living here, and they'd never bothered to pack away a single box. I bought packing boxes from a moving supply store. Good ones, sturdy, the kind you'd use for actual belongings you cared about. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was being fair, methodical. I folded clothes carefully, wrapped picture frames, packed shoes in tissue paper. Everything documented with photographs, timestamps, my phone recording every careful movement. It took 2 full days. When I was done, 23 boxes sat neatly stacked in the garage, each one labeled Danielle's clothes, Tracy's office supplies, bathroom items, kitchen gadgets they'd brought. Everything organized, nothing damaged, nothing missing. On February 22nd, I returned to Gloria's office. She had the documents ready. The new will, the revoked powers of attorney, the designation of Oregon Community Foundation as my emergency contact and medical proxy instead of Danielle. This is your last chance to reconsider, Gloria said as she laid out the papers for my signature. Once you sign these, you're effectively removing your daughter from any legal claim to your estate or decision-making about your care. I picked up the pen. That's exactly what I want to do. My signature felt steady as I signed each document. Gloria witnessed them. Her assistant notarized them, and just like that, Danielle's presumed future inheritance vanished. These are now filed with the court, Gloria said, legal and binding. If anything happens to you, the foundation handles your affairs. When you pass, your estate will be distributed according to the new will. Which leaves Danielle. Nothing. Oregon allows you to completely disinherit children. You've done so. She has no legal claim to anything. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not quite relief. Not yet, but something close. Thank you, Gloria. That evening I checked Danielle's social media. There they were, posted just an hour ago. Photos of her and Tracy on a white sand beach. Sunset behind them. Tropical drinks in hand. The caption read, Day 4 in paradise. Best decision ever. Thank you to the best dad in the world for always supporting us. The comments were full of friends telling her how lucky she was, how wonderful it must be, how they wished they could escape to Hawaii. 147 likes and counting. I looked at those photos for a long time, at Danielle's bright smile, at the way she posed with her drink like she didn't have a care in the world, at Tracy's arm around her shoulder, both of them glowing with that particular smugness of people who think they've gotten away with something. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed a single sentence. Enjoy it, princess. It's the last free vacation you'll ever take. Then I deleted it. No digital trail, no evidence of intent. Just a bitter old man sitting alone in his house, looking at pictures of his daughter having the time of her life with his money, or rather, with what used to be his money. That particular well had just run dry, though she didn't know it yet. I had 10 more days until they came home. 10 more days to tie up loose ends, to make sure every defense was in place, to prepare for the confrontation that would come the moment their keys didn't work in my locks. 10 more days until Danielle and Tracy discovered what happens when you mistake patience for weakness and kindness for stupidity. I was rather looking forward to it. Marcus called on February 25th. I've arranged a meeting with William Douglas. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, at the Heritage Auctions Building, your old stomping grounds, neutral territory. I arrived 15 minutes early, old habit from decades of appointment-based work. The Heritage Building looked the same as it had 5 years ago when I'd retired. Same marble lobby, same security desk, same faint smell of old money and older secrets. The guard recognized me and waved me through with a smile. William Douglas was already in the private viewing room when I arrived, which told me something about his character. Punctual people are usually honest people. He rose when I entered, mid-70s, silver hair perfectly groomed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension check. "Mr. Coleman," his handshake was firm, assured, "Marcus speaks highly of you. I understand we have a somewhat delicate situation to discuss." That's one way to put it. I sat across from him at the polished mahogany table where I had examined countless pieces over the years. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Marcus suggested the matter was urgent and personal. I'm intrigued. He gestured for me to continue. I laid out the story methodically, the way I'd learned to present evaluations. Facts first, documentation second, emotional context last. Eleanor's ring, purchased together in San Francisco, a 25th anniversary gift. Her death 3 years ago. My daughter moving in, the systematic theft. The fake ring pawned while the real one was sold to him 2 months earlier for $67,000. Douglas listened without interruption, his fingers steepled under his chin. When I finished, he reached for the documentation I'd brought. Insurance records spanning 30 years. Photographs of Eleanor wearing the ring. The original certification from the Bangkok dealer, appraisal documents, and finally the security footage of Danielle at the pawn shop. He watched the video twice, his expression neutral. When it ended, he set down the tablet and studied me with the same intensity I'd once used to examine suspect gemstones. "You have incontrovertible proof of ownership," he said finally, "and equally clear evidence of theft. Why not simply report this to the police and let the legal system handle recovery? Because that would take months, possibly years. Because my daughter might face criminal charges, which despite everything I'm not sure I want. And because you purchased the ring in good faith, you shouldn't be penalized for her crime. Honorable," he leaned back in his chair. "What are you proposing?" "I'll buy it back. $75,000. $8,000 more than you paid. I'll cover all your acquisition costs, evaluation fees, storage insurance, any premiums you've paid. Additionally, I'll provide professional appraisal services for 3 stones from your collection. No charge. That's approximately $5,000 in value, possibly more depending on what you need evaluated." Douglas was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the window overlooking downtown Portland. I could almost see him calculating, weighing options, considering angles. Finally, he spoke without turning around. "Mr. Coleman, I've been collecting rare gemstones for 42 years. I've seen forgeries, frauds, family disputes, and more variations of human greed than I care to enumerate. But I've also learned to recognize integrity when I encounter it." He turned back to face me. "You're offering to pay significantly above market rate to recover your own property, stolen from you by your own child. That's either desperate or principled. Looking at you, I believe it's the latter. I just want Eleanor's ring back." "Eleanor was your late wife?" "Yes. She wore that ring for 15 years, through good times and bad times, through cancer treatments and hospital stays. It was on her finger the day before she died, until her hand swelled too much to wear it anymore." I hadn't planned to say all that, but it came out anyway. To my daughter, it's worth $67,000. To me, it's priceless. But I can't ask you to take a loss because of my family's dysfunction. Douglas nodded slowly. "I accept your offer, Mr. Coleman. The ring is yours. Shall we say Friday for the exchange? That gives us both time to arrange the necessary documentation and payment." We shook hands, and I felt something loosen in my chest. Not quite relief, not yet, but something close to it. Friday, February 28th, arrived gray and cold. I met Douglas back at Heritage with the cashier's check for $75,000, the largest single purchase I'd made since buying the house 32 years ago. Tom Morrison had nearly fallen out of his chair when I'd requested it, but he'd processed it without question. Marcus was there as witness. Douglas handed me a small velvet box, the same kind the Bangkok dealer had used 3 decades ago. I opened it with hands that trembled slightly. The sapphire caught the light and held it, that impossible depth of blue that had first captivated Eleanor in a San Francisco jewelry district. Flawless, rare, irreplaceable, worth every penny I'd just paid. "It's been an honor," Douglas said quietly. "Take care of it." "I will." In my car afterward, I sat with the box in my hands, not quite ready to start the engine. $75,000. Most of my retirement savings. Money I'd planned to live on for the next 20 years, carefully budgeted and allocated. Now reduced to whatever remained in my accounts. Enough to get by, but not enough to feel secure. Danielle hadn't just stolen the ring. She'd forced me to bankrupt myself to get back my own property. But I'd won. That's what mattered. I had Eleanor's ring. I had documentation of the theft. I had proof of Danielle's lies. And I had legal protection for whatever remained of my assets. Tomorrow, Danielle and Tracy would come home from Hawaii. Tomorrow, they'd find their keys didn't work. Tomorrow, the war would truly begin. Tonight, though, I had one more thing to do. I drove to my bank and rented a safe deposit box, something I should have done years ago. I placed Eleanor's ring inside, along with copies of all the documentation, the pawn shop video, the sales records from Belmont Estate Jewelers, the bank statements showing Danielle's unauthorized withdrawals, the photos of her social media posts from Hawaii funded by stolen money. Then I locked the box and pocketed the key. Let her try to take it now. The text came at 11:47 a.m. on March 5th. "Landing in 20 minutes. Can't wait to see you. XOXO." I read it twice, then set down my phone and looked around the house. It was clean, orderly, and completely devoid of any trace that Danielle and Tracy had ever lived here. Their 23 boxes sat neatly stacked in the garage, each one labeled and photographed. New locks on every door. New will filed with the court. Bank accounts secured. Eleanor's ring safe. I was ready. At 12:30, I heard a car in the driveway. Through the front window, I watched them climb out of their Uber, tanned, relaxed, laughing about something. Tracy pulled their luggage from the trunk while Danielle checked her phone, probably texting friends about their wonderful vacation. They walked up to the front door, still chatting. Tracy reached into his pocket for his keys, selected one, and inserted it into the lock. It didn't turn. I watched his face change from casual confidence to confusion. He tried again, jiggling the key. Nothing. He pulled it out, examined it, tried a different key from his ring. Still nothing. "What's wrong?" Danielle's voice carried through the door. "Keys don't work. Must be the wrong ones." "They're not the wrong ones. I saw you use them 2 weeks ago." "Well, they're not working now." Frustration creeping into his voice. Danielle tried her own keys with the same result. I could see the confusion morphing into something else. Concern, maybe even the first whisper of fear. Tracy rang the doorbell. I counted to 5, then opened the door. They both stood there, tanned and bewildered, suitcases at their feet. "Dad!" Danielle's smile was pure relief. "Thank goodness you're home. Something's wrong with the locks. Our keys aren't working. Did you have them changed?" "I did?" The smile faltered. Why?" "Because this is my house, and I decided to change the locks." Tracy stepped forward, his vacation-mellowed expression hardening. "Bob, what's going on here?" "What's going on," I said calmly, "is that you two no longer live here. Your belongings are packed in boxes in the garage. You can collect them at your convenience." Danielle's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, dawning alarm. "Dad, this isn't funny." "Let us in. We're exhausted from the flight." "I'm not joking, Danielle. You're not coming in." "You can't just lock us out." Tracy's voice rose. "We have rights. We live here." "You lived here, past tense. And actually I can. This house is in my name alone. You've never paid rent. You have no lease, no rental agreement, no legal claim to residency. I've consulted with an attorney. Everything I've done is completely legal." Danielle's eyes were filling with tears, the same manipulation tactic that had worked on me for 38 years. "Dad, please. What did we do? Why are you being like this?" I looked directly at her. and I let her see something I'd been hiding for weeks. Not anger, something colder. You sold your mother's ring, Danielle. The sapphire ring. The one you pawned a fake version of for $800. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. It was extraordinary, really, like watching someone's foundation crumble in real time. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. You sold it for $67,000 to a private collector in December. Then you had a replica made and pawned that in February, probably to establish a paper trail showing you only got $800 for it. I pulled out my phone, showed them screenshots. I have the security footage from Fisher's Pawn. I have the sales records from Belmont Estate Jewelers. I have documentation of every unauthorized withdrawal you made from my bank account over the past year. $30,000, Danielle, and that's just the past 12 months. Tracy's face had gone from angry to pale. Now wait a minute. I'm not waiting for anything. I have the ring back, by the way. Cost me $75,000 to buy back my own property, nearly every cent of my retirement savings. I looked at Danielle, whose tears were now real, born of panic rather than manipulation. So when you ask what you did, that's what you did. You stole from me for 3 years. You sold your mother's engagement ring. You treated me like an ATM machine. And you did it all while living rent-free in my house, eating my food, and posting on social media about what a wonderful father I am. Dad, I can explain. I don't want your explanations. I want you gone. Your things are in the garage. Take them and leave. Tracy found his voice again, though it had lost its earlier bravado. You can't do this. We'll sue. We'll call the police. You'll what, Tracy? Tell the police I changed the locks on my own house? Tell a judge I revoked bank access that I should never have granted in the first place? Explain to a court why you think you have a right to live in someone else's property for free? I almost smiled. Please go ahead. Call them. I have an attorney on retainer who'd be delighted to discuss this with you. Her name is Gloria Sanchez. I can give you her number. They stood there on my porch, sun-tanned and beautiful and completely destroyed. Danielle was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. Tracy looked like he was calculating odds and finding them all bad. I'll get the garage door opener, I said, and closed the door in their faces. They left that afternoon loading boxes into a rental truck with mechanical shell-shocked movements. I didn't watch. I didn't need to. The garage door opener documented their departure with its automatic close cycle at 4:17 p.m. That evening my phone rang. Danielle, I let it go to voicemail. She called 6 more times. I blocked the number. The next morning, March 6th, Gloria called. I've received a letter from an attorney representing your daughter and son-in-law. Stephen Chambers. I know him. Aggressive, expensive, and usually takes cases he thinks he can win. What does he want? Everything. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent, that you gifted Danielle permanent access to your accounts, that they have an oral agreement giving them rights to live in your home indefinitely, that you're acting erratically due to grief and age-related cognitive decline. She paused. It's all nonsense, but it's well-crafted nonsense. Can they win? Not a chance. We have documentation of everything. But Robert, they're going to make this ugly. Are you prepared for that? I've been prepared since I found out she sold Eleanor's ring. Gloria's response came through the phone with grim satisfaction. Good. I'll draft our response today. On March 7th, Danielle discovered the bank account was empty. The call came at 2:30 p.m. Tracy's number this time. I answered on speakerphone. Where is it? Danielle's voice shrill with panic. Where's the money? What money, Danielle? The account. Your account. I went to transfer funds for the lawyer and there's nothing there. You stole my money. The irony was so perfect I almost laughed. Your money? Danielle, that was never your money. It was my account. You had access as a courtesy, which I revoked. The money was transferred to a new account, one you don't have access to. You can't do that. I need that money. We have bills. You should have thought of that before you stole $30,000 from me over the past year. $70,000 if we count the full 3 years. And that's not even including the $67,000 you got for Eleanor's ring. Silence. Then Tracy's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. You senile old... I hung up. March 8th brought the kind of stupidity only desperate people attempt. At 11:30 p.m., my security system alerted me to movement in the backyard. I turned on the exterior lights and saw Tracy trying to jimmy open the back window. The same window that used to stick, that had fixed himself 2 years ago, probably creating his own backup entry point even then. I called 911. Portland Police, what's your emergency? I have an intruder attempting to break into my home through the back window. Male, early 40s, wearing dark clothing. The police arrived in 4 minutes. Tracy was still there, frozen in the spotlight like a deer caught in headlights. I watched from the kitchen window as they handcuffed him, read him his rights, and loaded him into the back of their patrol car. They released him 3 hours later, but the arrest record was permanent. Attempted burglary, criminal trespass, served on his own father-in-law's property. Gloria called the next morning. I heard about last night. That was remarkably stupid of him. Desperation makes people stupid. It also makes them dangerous. Be careful, Robert. But I wasn't worried. The dangerous part was over. Now came the cleanup. On March 10th, 3 days after the bank account discovery, Danielle came to the house alone. No Tracy this time. She rang the doorbell at 10 a.m. and I answered. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt. The tan from Hawaii had faded to a sickly yellow-brown, making her look jaundiced. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept. Dad, her voice was hoarse. Please, we need to talk. We don't have anything to talk about, Danielle. Please. She wasn't crying, which was almost more alarming than if she had been. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Against my better judgment, I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. 5 minutes. She took a shaky breath. I know what I did was wrong. I know I can't fix it. But please, Dad, just let me try. I'll return the ring. I already have the ring. I bought it back from the collector for $75,000, nearly every penny of my retirement savings. Her face crumpled. Then I'll pay you back. The money I took, With what? You don't have a job, Danielle. You haven't had a job in years. You and Tracy have been living off me like parasites since your mother died. Where exactly is this money going to come from? I'll get a job. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll sell the BMW. The BMW you bought with money you stole from me? That BMW? Silence. What do you want from me, Danielle? What is it you think is going to happen here? That I'll forgive you? Let you move back in? Restore your access to my accounts? After everything you've done? I want another chance. Her voice broke. I want my father back. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for just a moment I saw the little girl who'd ridden on my shoulders, who'd made me clay pots in art class, who'd cried when her goldfish died and made me promise we'd give it a proper funeral. Then I blinked and saw what she'd become, what she'd chosen to become. You don't want your father back, Danielle. You want your ATM back, your free housing, your safety net. You want the man you've been robbing for 3 years to keep letting you rob him. I shook my head. That man is gone. He died the day I found out what you'd done. Dad, go away, Danielle. Get your life together. Get away from Tracy. Find a job. Figure out who you are when you're not stealing from me. And maybe, in 10 or 20 years, we can have this conversation again. But right now, you're not my daughter. You're just someone who stole from me. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this. You made every choice that led to this moment. This is what consequences look like. I went back inside and closed the door. Through the window, I watched her stand there for a long minute, shoulders shaking. Then she walked to her car, a modest sedan now, not the BMW, and drove away. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt tired. But I also felt free. On March 12th, Gloria called with news I'd been expecting. Chambers withdrew. Danielle and Tracy dropped their case. Why? Because he actually looked at the evidence and realized they don't have a leg to stand on. The arrest record for Tracy didn't help. Neither did the documentation of the unauthorized withdrawals. And when I mentioned we were considering filing a police report for grand theft, he advised them to cut their losses. She paused. It's over, Robert. You won. Won. The word felt hollow. March 13th. I watched from my office window as a rental truck pulled into the driveway. Danielle and Tracy emerged, collected their boxes from the garage, and loaded them without speaking. Danielle looked up at the house once, at the window where I stood. Our eyes met across the distance. Then she climbed into the truck and drove away. I never saw her again. March 14th brought unseasonably warm weather. I drove to the cemetery for the first time since Eleanor's funeral. Her headstone was simple. Eleanor Rose Coleman, 1963-2022. Beloved wife. She loved beautiful things. I knelt in the grass and set Eleanor's ring on the stone, the sapphire catching the spring sunlight. I got it back, Eleanor. I'm sorry it took so long. My voice came out rougher than I'd intended. You tried to warn me about Danielle. You tried to tell me to pay attention. I should have listened. The cemetery was quiet, except for birds and distant traffic. I stayed there for an hour, telling Eleanor everything about the fake ring, the investigation, the legal battles, the look on Danielle's face when I'd closed the door. Things I couldn't tell anyone else. Things I needed to say. I don't know if I did the right thing, I admitted finally. She's my daughter. But she chose this. She chose to steal from us, to dishonor your memory, to treat our love like something she could sell for vacation money. I touched the ring, still warm from the sun. I hope you'd be proud. I hope you'd understand. A breeze rustled through the trees. For just a moment I could almost feel Eleanor beside me, her hand on my shoulder, telling me in that practical way of hers that I'd done exactly what needed to be done. I picked up the ring and drove to the Oregon Historical Society. The curator, a woman named Patricia, who'd worked with me on several estate evaluations over the years, met me in her office. Robert, what brings you here? I showed her the ring. Her eyes widened. Is this Eleanor's ring? Yes. I want to donate it to your gem collection, for permanent display, with a plaque, in memory of Eleanor Coleman, who loved beautiful things. Patricia understood immediately. It'll be protected here, preserved, available for people to appreciate. That's what I want. Eleanor loved sharing beautiful things with others. This way the ring serves the purpose she would have wanted. We filled out the donation paperwork. I signed over ownership, received the tax documentation, and walked out of the building feeling lighter than I had in months. The ring was safe. Eleanor's memory was honored, and Danielle could never touch it again. March 15th. I met with a realtor named Jennifer who specialized in estate sales. We walked through the house, room by room. Great bones, she said. Hardwood floors, updated kitchen, good neighborhood, should sell quickly. I need to sell fast. I'm moving to a smaller place. Any particular reason? I looked around at the walls Eleanor and I had painted, the floors we'd refinished, the memories embedded in every corner. Too much history, good and bad. Time for something new. The house sold in 3 weeks for $20,000 over asking price. I moved to a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood, with walking trails and a community garden. It had no memories, no ghosts, no weight of the past, just possibility. Marcus called in mid-April. Heard through the grapevine that Danielle and Tracy separated, filed for divorce last week. That didn't take long. Turns out their marriage was held together by your money. Without it, he trailed off. How are you doing? Better. I'm volunteering at the Historical Society twice a week, teaching gemology to their interns. Staying busy. Good. That's good, Robert. After we hung up, I thought about Danielle and Tracy. Their relationship had been as fake as that reproduction ring. Pretty enough on the surface, but worthless underneath. Without my money to sustain the illusion, it had crumbled as quickly as their attempt to steal my house. There was a certain poetic justice in that. I'd lost most of my retirement savings. I'd lost my daughter, though if I was honest, I'd lost her years ago. I just hadn't realized it. I'd lost the house Eleanor and I had built our life in. But I'd kept my dignity. I'd protected Eleanor's memory. I'd held the line between right and wrong, even when it cost me everything. 35 years of evaluating gemstones had taught me that value isn't always about price. Sometimes the most precious things can't be bought or sold. Sometimes worth is measured in integrity, in standing up for what's right, in refusing to let yourself be diminished. I'd spent 3 years being a victim, 1 month being a predator, and now I was simply myself again. Wiser, warier, but not bitter, not destroyed. Justice isn't always easy. It isn't always clean, and it certainly isn't free, but it's worth every penny. If you like this story, please like this video. subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.